In the darker shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read ancient tomes, the order of the Abercast. We are the brave and bold.
Stigmata Studios presents The Jinn Jihad. The Jinn Jihad kicks your face with myths, mysteries, epic battles, suicide bombers, quirky characters, and divine power armor. In this epic graphic novel, the warrior archangels descend on a city in chaos. It's all-out war. The non-standard assembly battles an ancient terrorist organization and their ultimate weapon, a corrected, magically enhanced, unstoppable monster, the Jinn. This graphic novel is a wild ride. It's one part distant Arab myth, one part Old Testament angelic vengeance, and one part unique heroic tough guys. Available on Amazon. Get more info on the Jinn Jihad and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.
Bacon quickly realized that here in the New World was the proper environment for the accomplishment of his great dream, the establishment of the philosophic empire. It might be remembered that Bacon did not play a lone hand. He was the head of a secret society, including in its membership the most brilliant intellectuals of his day. All these men were bound together by a common oath to labor in the cause of world democracy. Bacon's Society of the Unknown Philosophers included men of high rank and broad influence. Together with Bacon, they devised the colonization scheme. Word was passed through the secret channels that here in the Western Hemisphere was the promised land of the future. Here, men of right purpose could build a new way of life, free from religious intolerance and political despotism that held Europe in its clutches.
The Abercast. Occult. History. Conspiracy. Violence.
The Ages begins with the shocking story.
All right, hey everybody, this is Abercast. I can't adjust my mic stand, and it's still fucked up. I'm your home boy, John Towers, and this is going to be a continuation of the last episode. We're going to be talking about The Secret Destiny of America Part 2. It's a book by a guy named Manly P. Hall, written in 1944. Before we get started, I'd like you to please consider supporting the show. You can rate and review the show you can sign into the newsletter. I don't hammer the newsletter all the time. Actually, I forget about it sometimes, so you're not going to get like diarrhea of the mailing list. 2, you can spread word of mouth. 3, I guess you could spread word of mouth. Like I say, if you don't know, or if you like to listen to the show, you probably know another weirdo that likes these kind of topics, so you can listen to the show with them. Generate a little water cooler talk, or you can purchase some books that you'll be hearing about during the show. That's the best way, because if you purchase some books, I get some money to pay for some of this stuff. I call this section of the show where I beg and plead you guys to help support it, the help spread the disease portion of the show. So help spread the disease, everybody. I'm recording the show hastily and early and somewhat out of order because I'm going to be drinking all weekend with a bunch of Masons because my best friend Jack Massacre is getting married. So congratulations to you, sir. And I'm going to be his best man, so I have to go and do best man stuff, which, you know, if you've ever been anyone's best man, means that you got to really drink a lot of people under the table. You got to really have a good time. So that's what I got to go do starting tomorrow afternoon. So I'm trying to get these episodes recorded for you guys so I don't leave you hanging next week. So that's what I'm all up to. So these 2 episodes really came into being because I felt like we sort of, as a culture, we kind of needed to take a break and think about America and maybe American exceptionalism for a minute. Not the same way that like Greeks are exceptional. Greeks have a Grecian exceptionalism, or like Romanian exceptionalism, or like Swedish exceptionalism. Like, America's different. And you could say it's not different all you want until it's blue in the face. You could say it's worse or better. I don't give a fuck. But it's different. It's just different. And I thought, you know, this book is all about why America is different. And since it was written in 1944, it actually is kind of like a postmodern sort of take about why it's different. You know, it's got this, we just won the war, you know, we're smarter than everybody else kind of thing going to it, or more wholesome than everybody else. We're like paying more attention. And I'm not involved in that at all. You know, do I think, I'll reserve what I think until maybe after this episode's over, but we're talking about this Manly P Hall book called The Secret Destiny of America. And this is the second episode on this. And the way that I found this book is in my research when I was doing my graphic novel called The Ages, specifically in chapter 4. The main character is basically, he's Cain, and so he's like this rebel, and he comes across and, you know, I want to say petitions the Lord, but you cannot petition the Lord with prayer, as Jim Morrison has told us time and time again in Soft Parade. But what he does is he basically acts out against the Lord, against, you know, whatever you call them, the Jehovah, or the Tetragrammaton, or, you know, the Demiurge, or Yabba-Boeth. You know, he acts out against them, and he gets cursed, so he's got to walk the earth forever. And The Ages follows him from point A to point B or whatever. Sorry, that was wedding stuff on my phone right now. Like, don't they know what I'm doing? Where was I? Oh, so in chapter 4, which, like, I don't know, it's all the shows are starting to like blend together right now. Chapter 4 is, I think, the Piscean, I think it's a Pisces chapter. I don't think it's I don't think there's an Aquarian chapter. It's all the way across the room. I can't get it. But anyhow, it's about this. It's about this idea where Cain comes to America pre-Columbus times, and he starts like steering history into making America like this land of freedom because he's lived in the dungeons, he's fought the wars, and he's been faced with the prisons of like these tyrants, including the tyrant god, his whole life. And so he starts trying to make this the more perfect union. He gets fucked up, it does, for sure. But that's where I originally came across this book, and I love this book. And as many times as I read it, I can make excuses about like how it sounds like it's globalist, and I can make excuses about like there's chapters about Nostradamus and stuff in it or whatever. But Manly P. Hall is like it's awesome. So yeah, so I'm reading this all over the place because Jack Massacre's wedding is coming up, and I got to get all this stuff done, so I'm not leaving you guys hanging. So before I get into the book, we're just going to do a quick summary where we are up to this point, in case for whatever reason you skipped last episode, or you're like, I hate what he said, I'm not listening to the last episode, I just want to listen to this episode. Whatever, fucks. Whatever you want, like whatever you think, you're not listening to it. I feel like I need to give you a synopsis, so I'm gonna do a synopsis. I don't mean to call you guys fucks. I do mean to do it, but it's all in love. So all right, I gotta get moving. I'm eating up too much time. Here we go. All right, so Manly P. Hall is a philosopher, writer, mystic, Freemason, lecturer, Rosicrucian, and chiropractor. He wrote a book in 1944 called The Secret Destiny of America. In the last episode, we talked a lot about the actual secret origins of America. We went from philosophizing, trying to solve the human problem, to the first civilized ruler, Akhenaten, who's a pharaoh of Egypt, and to early pre-Columbus discoveries and exploration of America. Ancient peoples encoding secrets into their mythology. And then we tackled the story of Solon of Athena, who went on through a game of telephone to pass the story of Atlantis to this guy named Critias, who told his mentor Socrates, and who gave birth to the dialogue Critias, where he drops the knowledge about Atlantis. So we're currently in the narrative of the book now, so we're just going to go ahead and continue. We're going to get into this chapter. We're in chapter 11 right now, which is called The Objective of the Secret Society. So at this part of the story, a guy by the name of Sir Francis Bacon enters. Not only is it Sir Francis Bacon, but he's got a secret society of unnamed philosophers under his control. So here we go. Chapter 11, Objective of the Secret Society. Possibly the most remarkable of Lord Bacon's ethical contributions is the fragment called The New Atlantis, which forms a kind of gloss upon the principal philosophical production, the Inserato Magna. To Bacon, the greater part of learning was the application of knowledge to the necessities of the human state. It was only natural that he should envision the results should be inductive system given to universal application. The New Atlantis was first published in 1627. On the title page, is a curious design. It shows a figure of an ancient creature representing time, drawing a female figure from a dark cavern. The meaning is obvious. Through time, hidden truth shall be revealed. The figure is one of the most famous of the seals or symbols of the Order of the Quest. Contained within is the whole promise of the resurrection of man and the reinstitution of the divine theology. So we're seeing here what Hall sees as codes through various published texts and stuff. And when we're talking about Francis Bacon and like this brotherhood of the, or order of the quest, he calls it order of the quest. There's certain things that like you have to do. We're going to get into it later, to like just to let everyone know. It's kind of like a gang sign. It's like you're flashing it out to be like, hey, pay attention to this. So we're seeing these codes. What was Bacon's way to send his message out past even the events of his own death? It is well known among the secret societies of Europe that the second part of the New Atlantis exists. It included a description of a great room in Solomon's house, wherein are displayed the crests and coats of arms of governors of the philosophic empire. It may be for this reason that the writings were suppressed, for these crests and arms belonged to real persons who might have been subject to persecution, as Sir Walter Raleigh was, if their association with the secret order had been openly announced. The fable of the New Atlantis begins with the ship sailing from Peru for China, and Japan being driven from its course by contrary winds. Is he saying that the island of Japan is floating? This reminds me of that Democrat congressman that's like, you can't have too many people on one side of Guam because the island will flip. If you don't believe someone said that in this day and age, just Google search it. Democrat says Guam will flip. You'll find it. It's fucking awesome. But I just broke one of my cardinal rules because I never say, if you don't believe me, just Google it, because I fucking hate when people fucking say that. Those aboard, after many months, faced death by starvation and disease. They prayed to God for help, and their prayer was answered. The ship came at last to the fair harbor of a great ... city in an unknown land, where mariners were hospitably received, and after certain formalities were permitted to land, and the wonders of the cities were revealed to them. So, what he's saying is the ship was lost. This is like Gilligan's Island, except in reverse. Instead of showing up in an island where there's only 4 coconuts and a hot chick named Ginger and a bunch of dipsticks, they wind up in a city of people who understand that there's some lost fuckers and we need to help them. The New Atlantis describes the magnificence of the College of the 6-Day Work. Now, this College of the 6-Day Work, you're going to hear intermittently. It's one of the names of Sir Bacon's group of unknown philosophers. The 6-Day Work, there's a reason they call it that. I can't remember what it is. I'm winding down, dudes. I'm trying to amp it up. Here, the wise dwelt together in a general commonwealth of learning. One of the wise men makes the following statement in a prayer. Lord God of heaven and earth, thou hast vouchsafed for thy grace to those of our order to know thy works of creation and the secrets of them, and discern between divine miracles, works of nature, works of art, and impostures for illusions of all sorts. It is difficult to understand how this reference to a secret order has passed unnoticed for so long. It is scarcely less than proclaimed in the Society of the Unknown Philosophers. So it also describes, they go on to describe Wait, hold on. No, not yet. The book closes on a long lecture delivered by one of the fathers of Solomon's house. This great dignitary summarized the work of the Brotherhood in the following magnificent statement. One which might be inscribed over the doors of learning in the hearts of all scholars, scientists, and philosophers. The end of our foundation is the knowledge of causes and the secret motions of things, and the enlarging of the boundaries of the human empire, and effecting all of the things possible. So it also goes on to describe laboratories, observatories, mines, hospitals, gardens, the manufacture of medicine, and a massive statue of Christopher Columbus. Back to the book. Everything indicates that Bacon's dream that the College of the 6 Days should be erected in America. Any area peculiarly set aside by nature for the perfection of philosophy and the sciences. Part of the dream has been realized, and in this land are the greatest of laboratories, observatories, and institutions of research that the world has ever known. In exploring into the mysteries of the atoms, that the electrons have brought the heavenly fire, electricity, to be servants of our purpose. Moving on, chapter 13. Bacon's secret society is set up in America. Colonialization of the Western Hemisphere was largely motivated in the desire to pillage the fabulous treasures of the New World. The explorers, led on by legends of hoards of gold and silver and palaces encrusted in jewels, formed expeditions, often financed by their own purses, but sometimes subsidized by the state. The Spanish were the most successful of their quest for riches. The majority of their adventurers profited little and suffered much. And it also became apparent that by the sober colonization it was any sizable reward gained by the New World. From the promulgation of the Christian faith that the Western Hemisphere offered virgin territory, with the conquistadors came the priests, eager to convert pagan tribes and nations to the faith of the Old World. A holy inquisition was set up in New Spain. I just want to take a second right here. Hold on, I gotta find my pen again. Let me reread that. A holy inquisition was set up by New Spain. Dun, dun, dun! No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. And Indians by the tens of thousands were tortured, killed for the good of their immortal souls. It was due to the zeal of these priests that the libraries of the Mayans were burned and their historical records were destroyed. Bacon quickly realized that here in the New World there was a proper environment for the accomplishment of his great dream, the establishment of his philosophic empire. It must be remembered that Bacon did not play a lone hand. He was the head of a secret society, including in its membership the most brilliant intellectuals of his day. All these men were bound together by a common oath to labor in the cause of world democracy. Bacon's society was society of the unknown philosophers, included men of high rank and broad influence. Together with Bacon, they devised the colonization scheme. Word was passed about through the secret channels that here in the Western Hemisphere was a promised land of the future. Here men of right purpose could build a new way of life, free from religious intolerance and political despotism that held Europe in its clutches. Bacon's secret society was set up in America before the middle of the 17th century. Bacon himself had given up all hope of bringing his dream to fruition in his own country, and he concentrated his attention upon rooting it in the New World. He made sure that the American colonists were thoroughly indoctrinated with its principles and its religious tolerance, political democracy, and social equality through careful appointment of representatives. The machinery of democracy was set up at least 100 years before the period of the Revolutionary War. Bacon's secret society membership was not limited to England. He actually goes on to tell this story about this German who was involved. Oh, God. All right. We're making good time. The early years of the 18th century brought with them many changes in the social and political life of the American colonies. By this time, most of the Atlantic seaboard was dominated by the English. Cities had sprung up, important trade flourished with the mother country, and the colonial atmosphere was in small counterpart of that of the English countryside. By this time, most of the important secret societies of Europe were well represented in this country. The brotherhoods met in rooms over inns and similar public buildings, practicing their ancient rituals exactly according to the fashion of the Europe. Hold on, wait a minute. I'm sorry. By this time, most of the important secret societies in Europe were represented in this country. The brotherhoods met in the rooms over inns and similar public buildings, practicing their ancient rituals exactly according to the fashion in Europe and England. The American organizations were branches under European sovereignty, with members of the two hemispheres bound together with the strongest bonds of sympathy and understanding. The programs that Bacon had outlined was working out according to schedule, quietly, industriously. America was being conditioned for its own destiny, leadership in a free world. Any count of a secret society in America would have to include the tribute of the man who has been called the first American gentleman, Benjamin Franklin. Although Dr. Franklin was never the country's president, nor a military general, he stands out as one of the most important figures in the struggle for American independence. Quiet, dignified, scholarly, and gentle. Franklin foresaw a new goal, forever changing the world through the square bifocal glasses, which he was the inventor. So without putting too much of a button on it, what he's saying that basically Franklin was steering the ship. He was a Mason. He had a lot of time in France. He was with the Hellfire, the sex club of the French countryside. And he goes on to say, Franklin spoke for the Order of the Quest. And most of the men who, now I got to tell you that Manly P. Hall never mentioned the sex parties. I threw that in. I did that. Okay, so Franklin spoke on the Order of the Quest, and most of the men who worked with him in these early days of the American Revolution were also members. The plan was working out. The new Atlantis was coming into being, in accordance with the program laid out by Francis Bacon 150 years earlier. The rise of American democracy was necessary to a world program. And the appointed hour, the freedom of man was publicly declared. All right, we're going to move on to chapter 15. It's entitled, The Unknown Man Who Designed Our Flag. Robert Allen Campbell in 1890 published a little book called Our Flag, The Evolution of the Stars and Stripes. He refers specifically to the chapter of interest at our present consideration. The part of this sketch which treats of die proceedings of the Congressional Committee in relation to the colonial flag and of the unofficial consideration by a few of our revolutionary statesmen and heroes in regards to this flag of the 13 United States. immediately preceding its adoption by Congress. It has not heretofore been published. He goes on, according to the rules laid down by Sir Francis Bacon. This is what I was talking about before, bros. This is it. According to the rules laid down by Sir Francis Bacon for works published under the authority of Society of Unknown Philosophers, each book must be marked in some peculiar way, easily recognizable to the informed, but not conspicuous to those who are not in the party of the plan. All of the older writings are so marked, either with ciphers, curious headpieces, vignettes, colophons, designs, symbols, figures, or signatures. It is possible that this book, Our Flag, carries such a signature, for it ends with the following quotation: out of monuments, names, words, proverbs, private records, and evidences, fragments of stories, passages in books, and the like, we save and recover somewhat from the deluge of time. Francis Bacon. Chapter 2 of Our Flags is entitled, quote, The Colonial Flag, unquote. This is in substance is what it says. In the fall of 1775, Colonial Congress in session at Philadelphia appointed Messrs. Franklin, Lynch, and Harrison as a committee to consider the recommendation and design of a colonial flag. General Washington was then in Camp Cambridge, Massachusetts, and the committee there was to consult with him. While at Cambridge, the committeemen were entertained by a patriotic and well-to-do citizen. At that time, his best room was this gentleman's residency, and he was temporarily occupied by a peculiar old gentleman. As there was only one other guest room, Messrs. Lynch and Harrison. Messrs, I guess, is some kind of rank or something. Misters, something like that. Lynch and Harrison were... I'm only mentioning that because I don't want you to confuse Messrs with the name of a dude. Because we get into, like, is there 6 or 7 of them? That comes up later, if I remember correctly. Lynch and Harrison were given the occupied rooms, and Dr. Franklin shared apartments with the old gentleman. Nothing is known about this mysterious old man, except he was referred to as the Professor. His name was not preserved. He was beyond 70 years of age, but apparently in the prime of his life. He ate no flesh, fish, or fowl, or any green thing. He drank no liquor, wine, or ale. His diet consisted of cereals, well-ripened fruit, nuts, and such sweets as honey and molasses. He was well-educated, highly cultured, of extensive as well as varied information. He was very studious, and he spent most of his time pondering over rare books and ancient manuscripts, which he seemed to be deciphering, translating, and rewriting. These he kept carefully locked up in a heavy iron-bound chest and never showed them to any person. So Franklin, this professor, Washington, and the others, Harris and those guys, they were having dinner, and they formed this impromptu committee. They were like, I formed this committee, and the hostess, there's 7 of them, or 6 of them, and the hostess was like, well, I joined too, and they're like, you can't join because you're a woman. And they're like, she's like, well, I'll be the secretary. So, like, she was the secretary, and they joined this committee, and the professor started to speak. After a preamble, the professor made the following extraordinary remarks. The son of our political heir like the sun in the heavens, is very low on the horizon, just now approaching the winter solstice, which it will reach very soon. But as the sun rises from its grave in Capricorn and mounts towards his resurrection in Aries, and passes onwards and upwards to the glorious culmination in Cancer, so will our political sun rise and continue to increase power and light and glory, and the exalted sun of summer will not have gained its full strength of heat and power as the starry lion until our colonial sun will be in its glorious exaltations, demanding a place of the governmental firmaments alongside of, coordinate with, and in no wise subordinate to any other suns or any other nations upon earth. The professor went on to point out the flag which he recommended would be subject to change. The future of the national destiny increased. The change, however, would not require complete redesigning, but a process of gradual modification to make and announce and represent a new nation which is already gestating in the womb of time, which will come to birth, and that not prematurely but fully developed and ready for the change to independent life, before the sun in its next summer's strength ripens our next harvest. The design finally submitted consisted of a field of 13 alternate red and white stripes. Mother bitch. Red and white stripes. And in the area which now contains the stars was the British Union Jack. The area containing the Union Jack was one suitable for modification. The design was formally unanimously accepted, and the flag was adopted by General Washington as recognized standard of the colonial army and navy. There was no record of any report ever being made to this committee to Congress. So, in January 2nd, 1776, Washington raised the flag himself, and it was met by the British Army with 13 cheers and a 13 gun salute. It was easy to see why Mr. Campbell's story has received very little recorded recognition. It belongs amongst those shadowy and mysterious happenings which influence or change the course of empire, but will never ever find favor with the prosaic and unimaginative historians. So we're going to skip some stuff, and we're going to move to chapter 17. Chapter 17, The Unknown Who Swayed the Signers of the Declaration of Independence. And if you listen to the last episode, you know this is like my favorite shit of this whole book. So let's get into it. Let's get into it already. Come on, fuckers, let's go. On July 4th, 1776, in the old State House in Philadelphia, a group of patriotic men were gathered for the solemn purpose of proclaiming the liberty of the American colonies. From the letters of Thomas Jefferson, which are preserved in the Library of Congress, I have been able to gather considerable data concerning this portentous session. And reconstructing the scene, these are the words of Manly Manly P. Hall. These are not my words. In reconstructing the scene, it is well to remember that if the Revolutionary War failed, every man who signed the parchment then lying on the table would be subject to the penalty of death for high treason. It should also be remembered that the delegates representing the various colonies were not entirely of one mind as the policies which should dominate the new nation. Well, actually, I have a lot to say here. Not only were they not of one mind, they were all over the place. And when you read the Federalist Papers, you understand that a lot of them were like, let's abolish slavery. But they had to kind of unite with the southern states who did not want that. And I'm not giving anybody a pass here. I'm just trying to explain it. What we do on this show sometimes is sometimes is put things in context. So they knew if they were to do this thing without the southern states, it would rip the colonies in half and they would never be able to form up. Think about it as like a wrestling. Think about it as a wrestling promotion. You know what I mean? So you have a wrestling promotion of like good guys and bad guys, and they're happy fighting each other. But say there was an invasion angle, you know, the IW whatever comes in, they start like running in and fucking around. Instead of the good guys and the bad guys in the first set, joining forces to fight off the invasion angle, they get torn apart. And I don't know, maybe I should have really thought this through, and I should have had some like ideas or whatever. Okay, so like when the WWF or E or whatever was buying up everybody, and they did that invasion angle, like the faces and the heels like joined up to fight the invaders, like this invasion angle that was coming in. This is a lot like what I'm doing in my comic books right now, by the way, guys. There's a huge major force moving in, and I just got to like destroy the guys that are in there right now and like separate them. I don't know if that makes any sense. Does it? I've been talking and drinking for too long. I don't know if I've made my point or not. So they, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is they figure that they could just move on with the way shit was now and figure it out in 100 years or so, or 60 years or so, whatever, how many ever years or so it was. And they did. And when they did figure it out, it was like brother against brother, and these guys fucking paid the price of the liberation and all this stuff. Emancipation, you know, and all this stuff. But you know, it's rough, and you have to make compromises or whatever. So they're sitting there. So they're not only dealing with, you know, them fighting the English, they're also dealing with the politics of what's going to happen afterwards. So I know that it's just words being thrown against like hundreds of years of slavery or whatever is the problem. Not that whatever is the problem, like, you know, just trying to like put into context hundreds of years of slavery. I'm just trying to put it into context. Like these guys are up there. They're giving their lot. They're about to pledge their lives, their sacred fortunes, and all this other stuff, and their souls on this. And so, I mean, I don't know if I've pled my case or not, but I'm just going to move on because it's like I'm finding myself drowning here. There were several speeches in the balcony. Patriotic citizens crowded all available spaces and listened attentively to the proceedings. Jefferson expressed himself with great vigor, and John Adams of Boston spoke with great strength. The Philadelphia printer, Dr. Benjamin Franklin, quiet and calm as usual, spoke his mind with well-chosen words. The delegates hovered between sympathy and uncertainty. The long hours of the summer day crept, for life is sweet when there is no danger of losing it. The lower doors were locked, and a guard was posted to prevent interruptions. According to Jefferson, it was late in the afternoon before the delegates gathered to their courage to the sticking point. The talk was about axes, scaffolds, and the gibbet. When suddenly there was a strong, bold voice sounded, "Gibbet!" All right, here we go. Actually, I'm going to lube up before I do this. They may stretch our necks on all the gibbets of the land. They may turn every rock into a scaffold, every tree into a gallows, every home into a grave. And yet the words of that parchment can never die. They may pour blood on 1,000 scaffolds, and yet from every drop that dies an axe of the new champion of freedom will spring into birth. The British king may blot out the stars of God from the skies, but he cannot blot out his words written on that parchment there. The works of God may perish, his words may never. The word of the declaration will live in the world long after our bones are dust. And the mechanic in his workshop, they will speak hope. To the slave in the mines, freedom. And to the coward kings, these words will speak the tone of warning they cannot choose but hear. Sign the parchment. Sign if the next moment of the gibbet's rope is around your neck. Sign if the next moment the hall rings with the clash of falling axes. Sign by all your hopes in life and death, as men, as husbands, as fathers, as brothers. Sign your names to the parchment, for accursed forever. Sign, and not only for yourselves, but for all the ages. For all the parchment will be in the textbooks of freedom, the Bible of the rights of men forever. Nay, do not stare and whisper with surprise. It is truth, your own hearts witness it. God proclaim it. Look at this strange band of exiles and outcasts, suddenly transformed into people, a handful of men, weak in arms, but mighty in God like faith. Nay, look at your recent achievements, your Bunker Hill, your Lexington, and then tell me, if you can, that God has not given America to be free. It is not given to your poor human intellect to climb to the skies and to pierce the counsel of the Almighty One, but methinks I stand among the awful clouds which veil the brightness of Jehovah's throne. Methinks I see recording angel come trembling up to the throne and speak his dread message. Father, the old world is baptized in blood. Father, look with one glance in thine eternal eye, and behold evermore the terrible sight, man trodden beneath the oppressor's feet, nations lost in blood, murder, and superstition, walking hand in hand over the graves of the victims. Is not a single voice of a hope of man. He stands there, the angel trembling, the record of human guilt, but hark, the voice of God speaks from the awful cloud. Let there be light again. Tell my people, the poor and oppressed, to go out from the old world and the oppression and the blood and build my altar in new. As I live, my friends, I believe that his voice, yes, where my soul is trembling on the verge of eternity, where his hand freezing in death, where his voice choking in the last struggle, I would still, with the last impulse of that soul, with the last wave of that hand, with the last grasp of that voice, implore you to remind this truth. God has given America to be free. Yes, as I sank into my glooming shadows of the grave, my last faint whisper, I would beg you to sign that parchment for the sake of the millions whose very breath is now hushed in intense expectations as they look to you for these awful words. You are free. Fuck, bro. Oh, I stuttered there towards the end. Oh my God, it's so good though. The unknown speaker fell exhausted into his seat. The delegates, carried away by his enthusiasm, rushed forward. John Hancock scarcely had the time to pen his bold signature before the quill was grasped by another. It was done. The delegates turned to express their gratitude to the unknown speaker for his elegant words. He was not there. Hall goes on to say, to write the history of these men would be to write the history of the Order of the Quest. The story of the unknown philosophers. Some, like Francis Bacon, come to high estate, but most of the unknown work obscurely through other men who gain credit in the fame. In an old book of rules used by brothers in the secret orders is the following: our brothers shall wear the dress and practice the customs of other nations of which they travel, so they should not be conspicuous or convey their appearance as different or unusual. Under no conditions shall they reveal their true identity or the work which they have come to accomplish, but shall accomplish all things secretly and without violating the laws or statutes of the country in which they work. For those who did not reveal their true identity or the work which they came to accomplish, one is the mysterious professor, which inspired the design of our flag and remains unknown and unnamed. And similarly is another unknown, the unknown speaker whose words removed indecisions and signing the Declaration of Independence. It is not known who he was or the incident that preserved only in a rare book, in a very existence of which is difficult to prove. So we're going to go on to do this. I don't know exactly what to do with this chapter. Chapter 18 is the symbols of the great seals of the U.S. I'll go ahead and I'll do the like the wrap up, the synopsis, I guess, and then I'll read one or two chosen lines. 18, the symbol of the Great Seal of the U.S. And the only reason I'm holding back on this is because I think that this is probably going to be a whole episode at some point in time. So I don't want to drive too much into it. Is the American eagle actually a phoenix? A selection of the fabulous bird of the ancient seems to have been the attention of the designer of our nation's Great Seal. The phoenix is the symbol of reborn and wisdom. The design of the reverse of the Great Seal is even more definitely related to the Order of the Quest. The pyramid and the all-seeing eye represents a universal house, surmounted by the radiant emblem of the great architect of the universe. These three symbols in combination are more than chance or coincidence. So, that's a good overview. And I'm just going to read the last couple passages, the last couple paragraphs here in this chapter. The obverse of the Great Seal has been used by the Department of State since 1782, but the reverse was not cut at that time because it was not regarded as a symbol, because it was regarded as a symbol of a secret society and not that proper device for a sovereign state. Quite rare are the discoveries and the use of the symbol in any important form until recent years. Remember, this was written in 1944. The most American citizens learned the first time that there was a design on the reverse of the seal was when it appeared on the dollar bill, series 1935A. As far as anyone may know, the use of the seal in 1935 was probably without premeditation or special implication, but it was interesting that the appearance should coincide with great changes affecting democracy in all parts of the world. As early as 1935, the long shadow of world democracy or world tyranny had been extended themselves across the surface of the globe. Again, flat earthers, come at me and protect your neck. The surface of the globe. Democracy was on the threshold of its most severe testing. The rights of man that Thomas Paine defended We're being assailed on every hand by selfishness, inhibition, and tyranny. Then, on the common medium of our currency appeared this eternal emblem of our purpose. The combination of the phoenix and the pyramid and the all-seeing eye is more than a chance coincidence. There is nothing about the early struggles of the colonists to suggest the selection of farmers, shopkeepers, or country gentlemen. There is nothing possible of the origin for these symbols that is the secret society which came to this country 150 years before the Revolutionary War. Most of the patriots who achieved American independence belonged to these societies and derived their inspiration, courage, and high purpose to the ancient teachings. There can be no question that the Great Seal was directly inspired by these orders of human quest, and that it set forth in the purpose far this nation as the purpose was seen and known to the founding fathers. The monogram of the New Atlantis reveals the continent set apart for the accomplishment of the great work. Here is to rise the pyramid of human aspirations, the school of the secret science. Over the nation rules the supreme king, the ever-living God. The nation is dedicated to the fulfillment of the divine will. To the degree that men realize and dedicate themselves that their work to their purpose, their land will flourish. To depart from the symbol was highly of this high destiny is to be false, and the great trust is given a priceless inheritance. Sorry, I sort of fell apart there towards the end. I'm going to focus. We're moving on to the last chapter, chapter 20, the end of the quest. Hold on. In America shall be erected a shrine to the universal truth. As here arises the global democratic commonwealth, the true wealth of all mankind, which is designed in the foundation that men shall abide together in peace, and shall devote their energies to the common cause of discovery. The power of man lies in his dreams, his visions, and his ideals. This has been the common vision of man's necessity. It is the secret empire to the brotherhood of the quest, consecrated to fulfilling the destiny for which we in America are brought into being. He goes on to say, religion, science, and philosophy are the three parts of essential learning. The government based upon one or even two of these parts must ultimately degenerate into tyranny. This is going right back to the first chapter where he's talking about the human problem. Degenerate into a tyranny, either men or opinion. These three realize the unity and knowledge. They are the orders of the quest. So he talks a little bit at length here about about winning, or about how we've won. And I imagine a lot of this stuff comes from the winning of the war. Obviously he saw, he actually mentioned, I actually read in the book where he was mentioning, the shadow of tyranny, or however he said was stretching over the globe. So a lot of this, you have to you have to look at a lot of this stuff through this post-war kind of jibe, where he's yeah, we rule, we rock the house, America, we rock the party that rocks the body. But here we go. This is him wrapping it up. And like I said, this is touching base with a lot of the stuff in the first chapter, where he's rapping a lot about the four problems of the four parts of the human problem, or whatever. Man is greater than the animal. not in strength of body, nor shrewdness, nor in the power of his senses, nor even the skill and patience. Man is superior because he contains within himself the faculties and powers by which can perceive his true place in the divine order of life. His power lies in his dreams and his visions and his ideals. And these intangibles are left uncultivated. Man is at best but a superior kind of beast, subject to all the ills and vicissitudes of the enlightened creation. But man has locked within him, hidden from the public gaze, a diviner part. So it is true that human society has within itself concealed from common view a nobler part, composed of the idealists and dreamers of all ages and of all races, who have been bound together by their common vision and man's necessity. This is the secret empire of the poets. So beautiful. This is the order of the unknown philosophers. This is the brotherhood of the quest. And so he goes on to talk about more about the University of the 6 Days work and all this stuff. And he wraps up the book with this passage. And I love it. This passage I love. Not as much as I love the guy who's amping the signers of the Declaration of Independence up. Fucking like he's revving them up like he's a fucking monster truck rally. But this is pretty good. This is the destiny for which we were brought into being, the plan which was devised in secrecy long ago, and in far places shall be fulfilled openly, as the greatest wonder born out of time. I love that. He's saying in so many words, I mean, they're talking about in so many words the, where's all my parts? They're everywhere. That's American exceptionalism. That's what he's talking about. The whole, I mean, if you want to get into it this way, the whole gist of the world, the whole wanting of the common man of the world was freedom. And it took us like a long fucking time to get here. And now it seems like we're just giving it back away like a bunch of fucking spineless jelly fucks. So it's time for me to wrap this up. I've gone long, man. I've been really hurting over this last half an hour or so. So thank you guys. Just keep in mind that I just recorded like these 2 episodes like back to back, like literally back to back. So if you hear me skipping and stuttering and all this kind of stuff, just keep that in context, bros. Just keep everything in context. That's the message of the show. Keep it in context. So before I go, I just want to say thank you so much for listening. Thank you for spending this hour and fucking whatever minutes it's going to wind up being. You know, if you want to add the last episode, like this 2 hours with me, I appreciate it. I feel privileged that I can help you get through your day. So there's ways that you can support me as well. Rate and reviews are the best. Like, that's the one that I like. My dick gets hardest the most with these right now. Because they don't cost anything except for just a little bit of time on your part. Just like a couple seconds. Like, you're on iTunes anyway. Just fucking do it. Just fucking do it. Anyhow, I'm not getting too accusatory here. I want to ease off the brakes a little bit. Pump the brakes, ease off the gas a little bit.
Stigmata Studios presents The Scorpion Strikes. In this comic book, a terrorist called the Scorpion is transported to a secret CIA prison. He quickly turns the tables on the guards and administrators and releases the prisoners. A well-armed anarchist called Constituent Zero assembles a team and fights to take the prison back. The story is a dark political action thriller. The Scorpion's actions set the stage perfectly for the Jin Jihad. Available on Indie Planet. Get more info on The Scorpion Strikes, the Jin Jihad, and other titles at stigmatastudios.com. Stigmata Studios presents The Test of the Scorpion. In this comic book, while the Jin Jihad is raging on one side of the city, the terrorist called the Scorpion sets a secondary attack in motion as he obtains a small tactical nuclear bomb. A mysterious, ever-living warrior called Cyrus the Dead Guy steps forward to test the faith of the Scorpion and his lunatic followers. This is an action-adventure story. It's a bit of swashbuckler that wraps up the Jihad stories. Available on Indie Planet. Get more info on The Scorpion Strikes, the Jin Jihad, The Test of the Scorpion, and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.
But sign to the newsletter. There's a link in the show notes. I don't fucking pump I don't use it very often, but it shows me that you love, it shows me out there that you're interested, at least. So there's that. You could buy some books. That's the best way to do it, because I just spent 3 hours recording these 2 episodes, and I'm supposed to be finishing the inks on this Gretchen Cooper comic book. So I'm rearranging my schedule, everybody. Even if you don't like comic books, just check it out. Just check out the website, stigmatastudios.com. There you go. Society-13.com. That's a great way you can do it. I'm so glad I got this done in 2 episodes. I was really freaked out. I thought this was going to be like a 3-episode thing, and because I got to hit the road like first thing tomorrow, I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. So I'm happy that I did it, and thank you guys again for so much. Check out ways to support the show. Please just check out the ways to support the show, and share the show with your friends, dudes, please. And then we're going to wrap this up. We're going to listen to, I'm going to decompress, and we're going to listen to Turpentine by Soda Jerk. You got your turpentine eyes. We're going to do that right now. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Soda Jerk, Turpentine.
It must be 1,000 cigarettes I smoke to remind me the times I ran. Still confide in you. I crawled inside your sleeping bag. You always had those turpentine eyes, and they're stripping me this time. As if you wanted everyone to hear the times you ran, a fear of being